Back on the Young Turks. Now we're going to talk to Congressman Bruce Braley from Iowa's 1st Congressional District. Congressman, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Great to be on the show again.
All right, great to have you. Let's start with the jobs bill. President Obama, of course, in the State of the Union mentioned this. It was the central part of his speech. What exactly is it, and what's being done about it now?
Well, that's the big question, because the House passed a jobs bill before the December recess. Predictably, the Senate did nothing. And once again, House members were left holding the bag, trying to advance the president's agenda that he ran on and that we won majorities on in 2008. And so right now we are waiting to see what the Senate is capable of putting together. And until the president can clearly identify what components of a jobs bill are possible in the Senate, it's very frustrating for those of us in the House who've already taken action to try to predict what they might do.
So let's talk about that, because Obama's got this Rodney King strategy now where he says, can't we all get along?
I love that description.
So, and he says, look, we need to get along with the Republicans, but even the Democrats, between the Senate and the House, you guys have a lot of acrimony and you're not on the same page. So go ahead, get along. Now, what does that mean to you, and what are you supposed to do about that?
Well, I agree with the not on the same page. I'm not sure that there's acrimony in the sense that we don't like each other. But look, the president in his State of the Union address on at least 5 occasions specifically thanked the House for moving key pieces of his agenda, and then said, and now we need the Senate to get moving. And I can tell you there were senators sitting in front of me who kept growing more and more uneasy as he went on. But my colleagues in the House are frustrated, taking tough votes to move the agenda forward, going back home and being hammered in their districts for taking those tough votes, only to see nothing happen on the other side of the Capitol.
So it's a lose-lose for you guys.
Well, yeah, the president needs to be engaged in getting the Senate to commit to what they can do under the current configuration in the Senate, getting them focused on specific, tangible things that we can agree on with them, getting it in a jobs bill and getting it passed and over to us for action.
So let's talk specifics of the jobs bill. What's holding it up in the Senate? What are the reservations of the conservative Democrats or whoever's holding it up?
Well, I wish I had the firsthand knowledge that I could answer that question intelligently, but I mean, a lot of it has to do with their reservations about what type of programs are going to be most beneficial in job creation. There's a lot of us who believe that infrastructure investment is a critical component of any jobs bill, because they're the types of jobs that can't be exported overseas, put people to work in every congressional district in the country, and help with the recovery. But there are other people who are more interested in trying to look at tax cuts, which are more a reflection of the failed policies of the Bush administration. We certainly want to provide incentives for small businesses to take risk and get engaged in the economy, and for lenders to free up capital so that they can expand by creating jobs. But some of the details on how you put those priorities in place are very difficult when you've got a completely different set of perspectives in the Senate.
So it seems like on the House side, and we're talking to Congressman Bruce Braley from Iowa, on the House side, you are almost waiting to see what the Senate's going to do across the board. Jobs bill, health care reform, because they got to go and do it through reconciliation. You know, the financial reform you guys have already passed and they're working on now. So, one, what are you supposed to do on the House side while you wait? And, well, let's start there, and then I'll get to the Senate side.
Well, fortunately, we received a great gift from the Republicans on what we can do while we're waiting, and that was their budget proposal that they're going to be introducing in response to the president's budget proposal, which brings back some golden oldies from the 2004 and 2006 campaign cycle, like let's privatize Social Security. Let's create a voucher system for people 55 and older to use when they become eligible for Medicare, and instead of giving them guaranteed health care benefits, they can go into the marketplace and fend for themselves as we face rising health care costs because we haven't fixed that problem. And
well,
you go on and on and on. So, you know, I can tell you we're going to be spending a lot of time talking to seniors about the real the emperor behind the throne that's reflected in their budget proposal.
Well, look, Congressman Braley, to be fair, if they had introduced that in late '07 or early '08 and it had passed, the senior citizens in this country would have been in great shape as the market crashed.
Absolutely. I'm sure that the homeless shelters would have been doing a booming business as people lost their retirement savings and were forced to look for alternative forms of support.
Yeah. Now, we talked about the Senate side and all the things that they got to get to. You mentioned the word priorities. So let's talk about priorities. Between the financial reform, health care reform, and the jobs bill, what order, in your preference or in the Democratic caucus preference in the House, should the Senate go in to tackle those?
Well, I think that the jobs bill, ironically, is probably the easiest to do on a short-term basis as long as the President is actively engaged with the Senate and Senate leadership in getting them to quickly coalesce around something that's doable and is compatible with what we've passed in the House. And I'm not saying it has to match up perfectly, but at least give us a framework for moving forward and reaching a compromise and getting a bill to the President to sign to start creating more jobs. I think that's absolutely critical and doable. Financial reform, I'd be a lot more optimistic, and I think it's absolutely critical in light of what we're seeing happening right now on Wall Street with these incredible, outrageous bonuses being announced. But the Senate has shown very little movement after the House has again shouldered the heavy load in moving that package forward.
Well,
and so then the other thing is we can't just wait forever to get a fix to health care. And it goes back again to that trust issue. A lot of people said, well, why don't you just pass the Senate bill, go to reconciliation, and take out the bad stuff? There's a huge trust issue with my colleagues in the House about whether that will happen in the Senate.
Let's talk a little strategy. We're talking to Congressman Bruce Braley from Iowa's 1st Congressional District, because on health care, at least I can see the strategy. You take the whatever it might be, public option, getting rid of the Nebraska clause, et cetera, and you pass that through reconciliation. I think that that's perfectly reasonable, and that affects the budget. At least it gives you a pathway, and then you can pass what the Senate passed earlier, and then you get a package, right?
Yeah.
I can see that. That's clear. But on the jobs bill and on financial reform, if they don't have the 60 votes, what's the strategy?
Well, the strategy there is to use an incremental approach to putting Republicans in the Senate on record against voting against key provisions that will create jobs. Because that's how you build a jobs bill in the Senate, that you can get the votes to cut off debate and then show them to be obstructionists if they are preventing us from moving forward with the jobs bill. But the point is the American people have made it loud and clear that a jobless recovery is not a recovery, and they want us to do things to create opportunities to create jobs. And so the Senate is going to have to wrestle with that reality and come up with a strategy that can get us to a bill.
And, of course, the ironic part of all this is that the Republican platform and talking point over the last 6 months at least has been literally jobs, jobs, jobs.
Yes.
And now they're, of course, stopping the jobs bill. But that leads to the final part of this puzzle, which is Barack Obama continues to reach out to the Republicans, but when he does so, if he winds up putting them on the spot, they cry uncle, and they say, oh, I can't believe this. I thought we were going to get a new Washington, and we're going to change the tone on Washington. Well, this guy's attacking me. But it seems to me that you can't have your cake and eat it, too. Like, in order for the strategy you're outlining to work, you got to be able to say to Republicans, if you don't vote for us and we can't get to 60, well, then it's on you. So
that's right.
Do you think that the president is making a mistake with that reaching out strategy because of that?
No, but I think he's learned some valuable lessons about how you reach out. I think that his trip to the Republican conference retreat in Baltimore showed him at his best, which is polite, respectful, but holding them accountable. You know, you can't just say that you want to be involved and then not offer any solutions that are meaningful in the conversation. You go back to their alternative health care bill that they introduced as a substitute amendment in the House. CBO scored it, and guess what? it would have led to 52 million Americans being without health insurance. And that's health care reform? So, what we have to do, and the president, has to engage them and give them a chance to have input, and then he has to expose some of the flaws in their ideas. And I thought he did a good job of that, and he needs to continue to do it as the chief spokesperson for what we're trying to move forward.
Congressman Braley, last question for you. I talk a lot on the show about carrots and sticks, and here you're telling us, hey, look, we've got to move these pieces of legislation through, and right now we're not getting any action in the Senate. So to wrap all this up, wouldn't it make sense for President Obama to say, hey, look, here's how I reached out. Here are the concessions that I made to the Republicans, the Deficit Reduction Commission, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But you have a deadline. And if you're not with us on jobs after we make these concessions, or you're not with us on health care reform or financial reform, well, then I got to turn around and tell the American people that it's 100% your fault. And I got to name names, and I got to tell you who stopped all of this, whether it's Chuck Grassley or Orrin Hatch or whoever it is.
I find nothing flawed in that argument.
So, all right.
And I mean, that's from the perspective of somebody who sat through 5 solid days of markup in the Energy and Commerce Committee on the health care bill, listening to Republican amendment after Republican amendment, some of which were adopted and incorporated into the bill. Same thing happened on the floor and in every other subcommittee that took up that bill, and then all we heard was we had no input into the bill. It's just not true.
They're not playing ball. It's a joke. I mean, if you don't give them a deadline and then take the whooping stick out, you're never going to get anything accomplished. So hopefully that they're listening to you, Congressman Braley, and we can get that word to the administration. Because if they don't put the pressure on, it's going to be hard for you guys in the House to get it done by yourself.
That's absolutely right, because the president does have the bully pulpit. When people look for leadership from Democrats, he is the one that everyone in the media tends to focus on, and we need him to just keep doing what he started last week. I thought the town hall meeting in New Hampshire was fantastic. We just need more of that type of delivery, and I think we'll be in good shape.
All right, Congressman Bruce Braley from Iowa's 1st Congressional District. Thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks.
You're welcome. It's great to be on the show.